This video will cover how to create behavior events in Danse. Specifically, we will define behavior events and demonstrate how to create them using 3 different sources, from your current Doric file, from a CSV file, and manually. We will also cover how to load behavior events over neural data and how to edit previously created events. Use the following timestamps to skip to the relevant sections. In this video, behavior events refer to repeated timestamps around which we will examine changes in neural activity. These events can be the arrival of stimulus like air puffs, tones, or food, or the animal's behavior response like consumption, presence in zone, lever presses, etc. To create a behavior event in Danse, select the Add Behavior tool and click on the Create Behavior Event option. This opens a window where we can specify the data source, the event detection parameters, and a preview to adjust detection parameters appropriately. First, the source defines where the data comes from and includes the current file loaded into the file manager, a CSV file, or enter manually. We will explain all 3 options starting with the current file. Let's name our events, making sure to avoid special characters, and choose the color for the event. Next, fill in the following dropdowns with a path to your dataset of interest within the file manager. Start with the data folder, the driver when necessary, the group, the series number, and finish with the dataset. Select this button to display a preview. In this example, we loaded an animal's speed over time and will identify periods when the animal is immobile. To detect events from the loaded data, we need to specify the data type, which for the current file is automatically detected, then what kind of event we are trying to detect, either only onset, only offset, or onset and offset. Let's set a threshold and zoom in to examine how events are detected for continuous values. Note that at this scale, we can see individual data points connected by lines. For only onset type events, the first data point that crosses the threshold is labeled as an event. We can modify the direction of the threshold crossing by changing the onset option from rising to falling. The detect and onset parameters are particularly useful when defining onset and offset events, as the rising parameter will find all the data points above the threshold, while the falling parameter will label all the data points below it. Note that only onset rising phase is equivalent to only offset in the falling phase, and vice versa. The last parameter for single events is the minimal interval, which defines the minimum distance between 2 detected events. This parameter is used to ignore events that occur really close in time. For onset-offset events, we need to define both the maximum interval between events and the minimum duration for each event. The maximum interval is used to merge sequential events that should in fact belong together. When the interval is 0, all events crossing the threshold are detected. Increasing the maximum merging interval merges events like so. 2 events will be considered independent if the difference between the offset of the first and the onset of the second is larger than the maximum merging interval, whereas if the difference is smaller, they will be merged together. So far, we've shown that using the maximum interval, we can detect the time when the animal was active. Alternatively, we can use the minimum duration and the following option to define when the animal is immobile. The minimum duration defines the smallest acceptable time interval in seconds of an onset-offset event, effectively ignoring very short events that aren't meaningful, such as a few frames when the animal isn't moving. We can adjust all the parameters until our events of interest, such as immobility, are properly detected. Note that by right-clicking, you can clear all events or even export the current plot. If the behavior data are not located in the current file, like the last example, we can import it from a CSV file. Use the Load File icon to choose the spreadsheet containing our data. The CSV file should be a comma-separated file with a header row and include a time vector in one of the columns, which must be of the same length as the behavior data. Specify which header column corresponds to the time vector and which column corresponds to the value of our behavior data. Finally, the Start element is used to align the behavior events to the rest of the neural data in the file manager. 3 synchronization options are available. The computer time option is used if the same computer recorded both behavior and neural data and the exact time of day in hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds of the behavior recording is known. Note that the start time of the neural data is automatically pulled from the Doric file. The second synchronization option is the time difference, which is used if the number of seconds between the start of the behavior and neural recordings are known. Note that 0 seconds represents the start of the neural recording, such that a negative time difference means the behavior recording started before the neural one, while a positive time difference means the behavior recording started afterwards. The third synchronization method uses digital output channel from the current file. This method is useful when a TTL pulse marked the start of the behavior recording within the current file. The start of the behavior recording is set as the timestamp when the first trigger switches from 0 to 1. Next, the process to detect events within the selected data is very similar to the process when using the current file, except that we have to specify the type of data between continuous, binary, and timestamps. Note that the timestamp data requires a different CSV file organization compared to other data types. For only onset or only offset events, the CSV file should contain at least one column with time points in seconds associated with each event. Specify the header column associated with either the onset or the offset like so. For onset-offset events, the CSV file should contain a minimum of 2 columns of the same length, where each row corresponds to the start and end of a single event. Note that for the timestamp data type, right-clicking on an event will allow you to delete it. Finally, if we do not have behavior measures or stimuli in either the current file or in a CSV file, we can manually enter timestamps. Just like the other 2 source options, we can choose to detect only onset, only offset, or onset and offset events. For the single events, enter the times in seconds separated by a comma like so. And for onset-offset events, enter timestamps in pairs split by a dash, with each pair also separated by a comma. To create your behavior events, select Apply. All the created events are saved under the Data Behavior Events folder. There is no limit to the number of behavior events you can create. However, you cannot load behavior events alone. Instead, load them with or over other traces. Note that multiple events can be loaded simultaneously. Right-click to clear events from the trace. To edit events, in particular ones that could not be originally edited, open the Create Behavior Event window once more and select the events in question from the current file. You can rename the event, then right-click on all the unwanted events to delete them. A new behavior event is created, never overriding the original. To recap, Create Behavior Events detects events above or below a threshold from data arising either from the current file, a CSV file, or manually added timestamps. Then, these events can be loaded over neural data, edited, and used for further analyses. If you have any additional questions or concerns, please contact us at support@doriclenses.com.